The spark of war. The vastness of space stretched endlessly before them. Stars twinkled like distant diamonds, scattered across a cold, dark canvas. This part of the galaxy, quiet and unexplored, had never known the presence of human life. The galaxy had seen empires rise and fall, but Earth had always been a distant, almost forgotten world, tucked away on the edge of the known universe. There were no signs of war here, no signs of conflict, only peace. But on Earth, peace was about to shatter. It was a day like any other, at least it had seemed that way. The sky was clear, the sun shining bright, and the streets of the small town were filled with laughter. Children played in the parks, their innocent giggles echoing through the air. But in the shadows, things were stirring. Far beyond Earth's atmosphere, a powerful force was on the move. The Galactic Council, the most feared and ancient alliance in the universe, was preparing to make its presence felt on Earth. The Galactic Council, made up of several alien species, ruled over countless star systems. They were used to control, used to being in power. For centuries, they had crushed rebellions and silenced worlds that dared to defy them. But there was one thing they hadn't counted on: Earth. The Council had underestimated humanity. In their arrogance, they believed that humans were nothing more than a weak, primitive species. What the Council didn't know was that Earth was hiding a secret that would soon shake the very foundations of the galaxy. It was a typical morning on Earth when the first strike came. A peaceful village, tucked away from the eyes of the world, was suddenly invaded. Alien ships descended from the sky, dark and menacing, their sleek forms blocking out the sun. The people had no time to react. The Galactic Council had sent its forces to Earth for a simple purpose: to send a message. They believed humanity needed to be reminded of its place in the universe. They had come for power, for control, and for fear. In a cruel and heartless raid, the Council's ships targeted the weak and vulnerable. A child, no more than 7 years old, was caught in the chaos. Her name was Emma. She had been playing in the yard with her friends when the ships appeared, casting dark shadows over the land. The people tried to flee, but the alien forces were too fast, too powerful. In an instant, Emma's life was cut short. Her death was not just the loss of a child. It was the spark that would ignite the flames of war. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake. They thought Earth would bow to their might, that humanity would cower in fear. But they didn't realize the one thing that made humans different from the countless species they had conquered before. They didn't realize that humans, when pushed too far, would fight back with everything they had. Across the world, word of Emma's death spread like wildfire. People's hearts broke, but in their grief, something else stirred: a deep, burning anger. They had underestimated Earth, and now they would learn the price of that mistake. In the quiet halls of Earth's government, leaders gathered to discuss the attack. They were shaken, their minds clouded with sorrow. But even as they mourned, they knew there was no time for weakness. The Galactic Council had taken a step too far, and Earth's leaders were not about to let that go unanswered. What the Council didn't know was that Earth had a secret, something they had kept hidden for centuries. During the dark days of Earth's history, long before the rise of the Galactic Council, humanity had built a fleet, a powerful force designed to protect the planet from any threat. But after the wars ended and peace settled across Earth, the fleet was forgotten, hidden away in the deepest corners of the world, kept in reserve for a day like this. Now, that day had arrived. The human leaders activated the fleet in secret, bringing to life machines of war that had been dormant for generations. The ships, once cold and silent, began to hum with energy, their engines coming to life. The fleet's commanders, long forgotten in history, were called back into action. They had prepared for this moment, and they would not let humanity be crushed under the weight of the Galactic Council's arrogance. Meanwhile, far away in the heart of the Galactic Council, its leaders celebrated their victory, unaware that the seed of rebellion had already been sown. They were confident, too sure of their power. but they would soon find out just how wrong they were. Earth was not a weak, defenseless planet. It had been waiting, watching, and now it was ready to fight back. The child's death had awakened something inside humanity, something deep and primal, and the Galactic Council was about to feel the full force of what they had set in motion. Earth's response. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Emma's death was everywhere, on every screen, in every home, in every heart. The Galactic Council's raid was not just an attack on a child. It was an assault on all of humanity. And though the Council believed it had crushed Earth's spirit, they were wrong. The fire of anger that had ignited within humanity would not burn out easily. In the secret chambers of Earth's highest council, leaders convened with urgency. The room was filled with grim faces and whispers of ancient stories long since forgotten. There were no tears, only determination. Earth's response would not be one of submission. It would be one of defiance. "We cannot afford to show weakness," said General Madison, a seasoned leader of Earth's military forces. Her voice was steady, but there was a fire in her eyes, one that had been absent since the world knew peace. "We don't have a choice. The Council thinks they can just wipe us out. We have to show them that Earth isn't just a planet of farmers and builders. It's a planet of warriors," added Admiral Rivers, his voice low and harsh. He had spent years overseeing the ancient fleet's restoration, preparing for a moment like this. The time had come. Outside, the world seemed to hold its breath. People continued with their lives, unaware of the quiet storm that was brewing beneath the surface. But in the dark corners of Earth, hidden from prying eyes, the ancient fleet was waking up. From deep within the forgotten vaults beneath the Earth, thousands of machines and ships that had been dormant for centuries slowly powered on. Their engines hummed to life as systems came online. The great warships, relics of an ancient war long past, stood ready. Their time had finally come. The ships, massive and imposing, had been designed with one purpose: to defend Earth at all costs. Each ship was more advanced than anything the Galactic Council had ever encountered. Earth's enemies had long forgotten about the fleet's existence, believing it to be nothing more than a myth or a legend. But they were about to find out how wrong they were. On the command deck of the flagship, Admiral Rivers stood before a massive display screen. A map of the galaxy stretched before him, showing the position of the Galactic Council's forces. They were scattered across the galaxy, complacent in their belief that Earth was powerless. But Earth's fleet was not scattered. It was focused, powerful, and ready for war. "Fleet Command," Admiral Rivers said, his voice steady but filled with unshakable resolve. "This is the moment we've been waiting for. The Galactic Council believes we're weak. They believe we won't fight back. They're wrong. It's time to show them what happens when you push humanity too far. We will make them regret their actions." The command deck was silent for a moment as the officers and crew exchanged glances. They knew the stakes. They knew the risks. But they also knew that this was the only option left. The fleet was prepared for launch. The ships began to rise from their underground bases, slowly ascending into the cold, vast expanse of space. Each ship, once hidden from the galaxy, now revealed its terrifying presence. The first wave was a fleet of powerful dreadnoughts, their massive hulls gleaming under the stars. Behind them, smaller but equally deadly ships followed in perfect formation. Humanity was not unprepared. They had always known that peace, though precious, could be fragile. And when a child, one of their own, was taken, the galaxy would understand just how fragile peace could be for those who dared harm it. In the dark reaches of space, the Galactic Council's warships patrolled the galaxy, unaware of the brewing storm. They continued their missions, oblivious to the fact that the greatest threat they would ever face was moving toward them. Hidden behind the veil of space, their arrogance would be their downfall. Deep within the heart of the Council, high-ranking officials gathered in a massive, imposing chamber. They watched the reports of their recent conquest of Earth, unaware of the consequences that would follow. The Council believed their strength was unbeatable, their power unquestioned. They couldn't have been more wrong. They're weak. They'll never recover from this, one of the officials scoffed, watching as Earth's cities smoldered on the screen. Humanity will bend to our will. This will be their lesson. But unknown to the Council, on Earth, the fleet was already in motion, heading straight for them. Admiral Rivers' voice crackled over the comms, his orders echoing across every ship. Prepare for jump. We are heading to Galactic Council space. Make no mistake, this is a warning. This is not just a rescue mission. This is Earth's revenge. As the fleet prepared to enter the vast expanse of space, every crew member knew what was at stake. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something far greater, the future of humanity, and the honor of those who had been wronged. The fleet's engines roared to life, a powerful sound that echoed through space. Each ship, a mighty war machine, began its journey toward the heart of the Galactic Council. The countdown had begun. There was no turning back now. In the cold silence of space, one thing was certain. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake, and now Earth was coming for them. The fleet awaits. Space, vast and infinite, stretched endlessly around Earth's fleet. Each ship, sleek and powerful, seemed like a shadow against the stars, silently awaiting the moment to strike. The hum of their engines vibrated through the cold metal hulls, a constant reminder that the fleet was not just an ancient relic, but a living, breathing force of vengeance. Admiral Rivers stood at the helm of the flagship, his gaze fixed on the vast expanse of stars before him. His mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. The Galactic Council had no idea what was coming. They still thought Earth was weak, that their attack on a single child would go unchallenged. But they were gravely mistaken. Fleet status report, Admiral Rivers commanded, his voice steady but carrying an undertone of urgency. Lieutenant Karen, a young but seasoned officer, tapped the console in front of her, her fingers flying across the holographic displays. All ships are ready, Admiral. The fleet is fully operational. Our fighters are prepped, and the dreadnoughts are in position. We're ready for the jump. The Admiral nodded, his face grim but determined. Good. It's time to show the Council what happens when you make an enemy of Earth. As the fleet neared its destination, the officers gathered in the command center remained silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Some thought of the families they had left behind. Others thought of the terrible loss humanity had endured, but all were united by a single purpose: revenge. Meanwhile, deep in the heart of the Galactic Council's empire, the leaders still celebrated their supposed victory over Earth. Their arrogance was palpable, their belief in their invincibility unshakable. They thought that Earth, with its primitive weapons and slow technology, would never be able to stand up to their might. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had never fought a species like humanity. Back on Earth, the preparations were nearly complete. In the underground facilities, the last of the fleet's ships rose from their resting places, their massive frames slowly ascending toward the surface. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, equipped with weapons and technology that had been designed not just to defend Earth, but to strike fear into the hearts of the most powerful empires. Beneath the surface of Earth, in the silent chambers of the command center, a series of ancient consoles blinked to life, powered by the same energy that once fueled the fleet. The screens flickered as they began to project real-time images of the Galactic Council's forces. Earth's commanders watched, their faces hardening as they saw the immense power of their enemies. "We know what we're up against," General Madison said, her voice resolute as she stared at the flickering images of enemy warships on the screen. "But we have something they don't: a reason to fight." Admiral Rivers, who had been standing behind her, stepped forward. "We don't just fight for Earth. We fight for every man, woman, and child who has ever called this planet home. This is our chance to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity." The room fell silent as the words sank in. There was no turning back. This was more than a battle for survival. It was a fight for Earth's honor, for its future. Every officer, every soldier knew the stakes, and they were prepared to pay any price to ensure that humanity's voice would be heard across the stars. In the cold, unforgiving silence of space, the fleet jumped into hyperspace, their engines roaring to life as they crossed the vast distances between them and the Galactic Council's core. The ships accelerated faster than the speed of light, their sleek forms cutting through the void as they moved closer to their target. Each ship was designed for speed and precision, their hulls reinforced and their weapons primed. The ancient fleet was no longer a forgotten myth. It was an unstoppable force heading straight for the heart of the enemy. Inside the command center of Earth's flagship, the officers waited with bated breath. They had been preparing for this moment for years, but now that it was finally here, the weight of it all settled in. It wasn't just a military operation, it was a statement. They were no longer just Earth, a small and insignificant planet on the fringe of the galaxy. They were humanity, and they would not bow to anyone. Admiral Rivers stood by the control panel, his fingers hovering over the buttons that would initiate the final jump to the heart of the Galactic Council's empire. The time had come. "Prepare for final approach," he said, his voice calm but tinged with anticipation. "Once we arrive, we strike hard. We show them that no one, not even the Galactic Council, can take what is ours." The crew moved with precision, their training evident in every action they took. In moments, the flagship and its fleet would break through the atmosphere of the Council's empire, and the battle would begin. Far across the galaxy, the Galactic Council remained blissfully unaware of the approaching storm. Their forces, spread across their many worlds, were not expecting a counterattack. They had underestimated Earth's resolve. They had thought the child's death would crush humanity's spirit, but they had ignited a fire instead. And soon, that fire would consume them. The fleet's approach was nearly complete. The tension aboard Earth's ships was palpable, but so was the certainty in their actions. The fleet was ready, humanity was ready, and the Galactic Council, for all its power and influence, was about to face the full wrath of Earth. Admiral Rivers' voice rang out over the intercom, clear and unwavering. "We are Earth, and we will not be silenced." The clash of titans. The silence of space was shattered by the hum of the engines, each ship in Earth's fleet moving in perfect synchronization, like a well-oiled machine. The vastness of space felt insignificant now. Earth was no longer just a distant, vulnerable planet. It was a force to be reckoned with. With every passing moment, the fleet drew closer to its target, the heart of the Galactic Council's empire. Inside the command center of Earth's flagship, Admiral Rivers stood, his jaw clenched as the countdown to their arrival ticked away. The crew around him was tense, but there was no fear in their eyes, only determination. They had all heard the stories of the ancient fleet, of its power and its legend. Now, they were living it. "Admiral, we're almost there," Lieutenant Karen reported, her voice steady, but carrying an edge of urgency. "The Council's defenses are ahead. They've set up a blockade, but it won't stop us." Admiral Rivers gave a grim nod. "No, it won't." Behind them, the massive bulk of the dreadnoughts loomed like silent sentinels, their weapon systems locked and loaded. The enemy had no idea what was coming. They were too used to their superiority, their belief that they were untouchable. But humanity had a different kind of weapon. The drive to protect what was theirs, to avenge a wrong that could never be forgiven. As the fleet emerged from hyperspace, the view on the screen shifted. The Galactic Council's defenses were massive, an array of ships stretching across the stars, their fleets poised and ready. They hadn't expected Earth to strike back, but here they were, and they were not alone. The fleet's arrival sent a ripple through the Council's ranks, an undeniable signal that the battle had begun. Admiral Rivers looked out at the enormous armada ahead. "All ships, prepare to engage. This is for Earth, for the future of our children. On the command deck, every officer took their position. The crew moved swiftly, their actions almost instinctual. The tension was thick in the air, but there was no hesitation. As Earth's fleet powered toward the enemy, the Galactic Council's ships began to mobilize, their weapons aimed, their shields up. A battle was about to unfold, one that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The first salvo was fired, a streak of bright energy lighting up the cold void of space as the Galactic Council's ships unleashed their firepower. But Earth's fleet was prepared. The ancient ships moved with a grace that belied their size, dodging blasts with ease, their shields absorbing the damage. The dreadnoughts, huge and imposing, were like gods of war descending upon the battlefield. "Return fire," Admiral Rivers commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. His hands never shook as he pressed the commands into the console, launching a volley of missiles that streaked toward the Council's fleet. The missiles collided with the enemy ships, erupting in brilliant explosions that lit up the dark expanse of space. For a moment, the battlefield was chaos. Bright flashes of light, the sound of powerful weapons colliding, and the eerie silence between each strike. "All ships, focus on their lead vessels," Admiral Rivers shouted, his voice firm. "Take down their flagship. Destroy their command." The Earth fleet surged forward, powered by their fury and determination. In the command center, the officers held their breath as the battle raged outside. The Galactic Council's ships were massive and numerous, but Earth's fleet had something they lacked: human ingenuity and a deep, burning desire to protect their home. As the battle grew fiercer, Admiral Rivers knew they could not hold back. There was too much at stake. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake by underestimating humanity. Now, they would feel the consequences. On the enemy side, the Galactic Council's fleet commander, Lord Velka, watched in shock as Earth's ships tore through their defenses. "How is this possible?" he muttered, watching the images on his display. The human ships moved with a speed and ferocity that defied logic. They were too well coordinated, too powerful. They had underestimated Earth for the last time. "They're not just attacking, they're fighting with purpose," Lord Velka said, his voice rising in disbelief. "Send reinforcements. Now." But it was too late. The fleet was already engaged in full-scale combat. The lead dreadnought, a massive ship with dark metallic armor and an array of deadly weapons, fired its main cannon. The blast hit the Council's flagship directly, sending shockwaves throughout space. The command center of the Council ship shook, alarms blaring as the ship took heavy damage. Lord Velka stumbled as the ship's lights flickered. "What in the stars?" he began, but his words were cut off by the explosion that ripped through the flagship's hull. In space, the battle continued to rage. Earth's ships, though fewer in number, fought with the strength of a species that had survived against all odds. They were not fighting for power, nor for control of the galaxy. They were fighting for something far greater. They were fighting for their fallen child, for their people, and for the future of their world. The Galactic Council had made a mistake, a costly one, and now they were paying the price. As Admiral Rivers surveyed the battlefield, a fierce determination burned in his eyes. His crew had fought bravely, and the enemy's defenses were faltering. One by one, the Galactic Council's ships fell to Earth's might. "Heap up the pressure," Rivers shouted to his crew. "We're making history today." The fleet's weapons continued to fire, and the enemy began to retreat, their ships retreating in disarray. The Council's arrogance had led them here, and now they would know the true strength of humanity. The Galactic Council's mistake was more than just an attack on Earth. It was a fatal miscalculation. Humanity would never be silenced. The battle was far from over, but Earth's ancient fleet had proven one thing. No one, not even the mighty Galactic Council, could ever underestimate the power of Earth. The tides turned. The battle had reached a fever pitch. The vast expanse of space had become a war zone, filled with flashing lights, explosions, and the sounds of ships engaging in fierce combat. Earth's ancient fleet, having unleashed its full power, was now closing in on the remnants of the Galactic Council's forces. The once mighty armada of the Council was crumbling, its ships desperately attempting to regroup, but there was no escape from the onslaught. Admiral Rivers stood at the helm of Earth's flagship, watching the destruction unfold on the screens before him. The Council's flagship, once towering over the battlefield, was now a smoldering wreck, barely clinging to the remnants of its own structure. Around it, the enemy fleet was in disarray, their ships falling one by one. "Report," Rivers barked, his voice sharp as ever. "Admiral," Lieutenant Karen replied, her eyes glued to the monitor. "We've neutralized nearly half of their fleet. The Council is retreating, but it's not over yet. They're trying to form a defensive perimeter around their remaining ships." "Let them try," Rivers said grimly, his eyes narrowing. "We've only just begun. Prepare for the final assault." Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the remaining Galactic Council ships tried to regroup and form a defensive line. The odds were stacked against them, but they were not without resources. The commander of the remaining Council forces, General Terrace, was a seasoned veteran, and he wasn't ready to surrender just yet. "We still have the upper hand," General Terrace muttered, watching his crew scramble to repair the damaged systems of their ship. "Reinforce the perimeter. Call for reinforcements from the outer sectors. Earth's fleet may have been powerful, but they can't destroy us all." His optimism was met with resistance as Earth's ships closed in. The advanced technology of the ancient fleet, combined with the sheer force of human determination, made every move from the Council appear slow and clumsy. The humans were relentless. "Admiral, their ships are retreating into a defensive formation," Lieutenant Karen reported, her tone tense but confident. "They're trying to hold their ground at all costs." "They're running out of time," Admiral Rivers said, his voice steady, unwavering. "The moment we break their defenses, it's over." In the cold vastness of space, the Earth fleet's ships moved in synchronized harmony. The dreadnoughts fired their cannons with deadly precision, each shot a calculated strike aimed at breaking the enemy's will. The missiles that followed were like streaks of lightning, tearing through the blackness of space and obliterating anything in their path. On board the flagship, the crew worked tirelessly, operating the ship's systems with flawless coordination. Every weapon, every shield, every maneuver was calculated to perfection. Earth's fleet had been designed for this moment, and they would not fail. "Prepare to fire on their lead ship," Admiral Rivers commanded, his eyes never leaving the screens. "Once we breach their defenses, we make sure they don't get away." As the final attack commenced, General Terrace watched in horror as the Earth fleet's firepower ripped through the Council's defensive perimeter. His fleet, which had once been a symbol of power and invincibility, was now a shattered remnant of its former self. Each shot from Earth's ships was like a hammer falling on a fragile glass, crushing his hopes of survival. "No," General Terrace shouted, slamming his fist against the console. "This cannot be happening. We can still fight back." But deep down, he knew it was too late. Earth had awakened an ancient power, and the Council was powerless to stop it. The human fleet moved like a wave, sweeping through the debris of the battle and claiming victory. Admiral Rivers watched the enemy ships retreating, their once unified front now broken. The Galactic Council, which had once believed they were invincible, was now nothing more than a defeated force, retreating in disarray. Rivers' voice echoed across the command deck as the final moments of the battle played out. "Push forward. Don't let them regroup. This is our chance to end it." On Earth's flagship, the crew could feel the weight of the moment. For many, it had been a fight for survival, for revenge, for justice. The death of the innocent child had sparked something within them, a fire that had never been extinguished. "Admiral," Lieutenant Karen said, her voice filled with awe, "we've done it. The Council is broken. It's over." Rivers allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction, though his expression remained stoic. The battle was won, But the war was not yet over. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake, but they were not the only force in the galaxy. The universe was vast, and Earth had just begun to show what it was capable of. "We've taken the first step," Rivers said, his voice resolute. "But this is just the beginning. We'll show the galaxy that Earth's strength cannot be underestimated. Not now. Not ever." As the Earth fleet drifted in the wake of the battle, the enormity of their victory began to sink in. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity, and they had paid the price. But the humans knew that this victory was just the start. More challenges awaited, and Earth was ready to face them all. The battle had been long, and the fight had been brutal, but Earth's fleet had emerged victorious. The Galactic Council's retreat marked the end of an era, a time when Earth had been ignored, belittled, and underestimated. But now, the galaxy would know the truth. Humanity would never back down. The consequences of defiance. The aftermath of the battle left the galaxy in a stunned silence. For centuries, the Galactic Council had dominated the stars, enforcing their rule with ruthless efficiency. Now their once mighty fleet lay in ruins, their power shattered. The remaining council leaders, scattered across the galaxy, were left scrambling to salvage what little dignity they had left. But one truth had become undeniable. Humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. Admiral Rivers stood on the bridge of the flagship, gazing out at the void of space. The battle had been brutal, and the victory hard-earned, but it was only the beginning. Earth's fleet had struck a decisive blow, but the Council's retreat was only the first chapter in a much larger story. "Admiral," Lieutenant Karen said, breaking the silence, "we've received communication from several of the Council's allies. They're demanding to know what our next move will be." Rivers turned, his expression unreadable. "And what do they think we should do?" "They want us to stand down," Karen replied, her voice tinged with disbelief. "To return to Earth and let them rebuild. They say the war is over." A grim smile crossed Rivers' face. "The war isn't over until every last one of them understands that Earth is not to be trifled with." Across the galaxy, various species that had once been allies of the Galactic Council began to take notice of humanity's newfound strength. The shockwaves of Earth's victory rippled through the stars, leaving many wondering just how far the humans would go. The Council's defeat had made them wary, but it also made them curious. In the cold reaches of space, aboard an ancient alien warship, the leaders of the Xanthar, a race known for their ruthless conquests, discussed the ramifications of Earth's rise. "Earth has done what no other species in the galaxy has dared," Xanthar Supreme Commander Varric said, his voice low and menacing. "They've struck down the Council. If they are allowed to continue their rise, it could change the balance of power forever." "What are we to do about it?" asked one of his advisors. Varric's eyes gleamed with dark intent. "We will show them that the galaxy does not belong to the humans. But first, we must know what they're truly capable of." On Earth, news of the victory spread quickly. People around the world celebrated, their pride in their home planet shining brighter than ever before. The ancient fleet had awoken, and with it, humanity's power had been revealed. But beneath the celebrations, a sense of unease simmered. "We've shown the galaxy our strength," Admiral Rivers said to his senior officers. "But now we must prepare for what comes next. The Council's allies will not let this stand. They'll be looking for revenge." Lieutenant Karen nodded. "What's our next move, Admiral?" Rivers turned to face the tactical map on the screen. "We wait. We observe. And when the time is right, we strike again." The tension was palpable in the command room. The universe had been rocked by Earth's unexpected rise, and the coming days would determine whether humanity would thrive or fall. On the far side of the galaxy, the remnants of the Galactic Council gathered in a hidden stronghold. They had been humiliated, their authority shattered, but they were not ready to fade into obscurity. Their leaders, once proud and confident, now sat in darkened rooms, plotting their next steps. Earth's fleet is stronger than we anticipated, Counselor Jareth said, his voice laced with frustration. But we still have allies, and we still have the technology to fight back. And if we don't? Another counselor asked, her voice shaking with fear. Jareth turned to her with cold eyes. Then we cease to exist. The council's leaders, once consumed by their own arrogance, now found themselves scrambling to retain their control over the galaxy. But their efforts were futile. They had made a grave mistake, one they could never undo. Back on Earth, the world's leaders knew that their victory had come at a cost. While the destruction of the Galactic Council's fleet had given humanity a moment of triumph, the truth was that they had become a target. Their enemies were many, and they were powerful. The Xanthar, the Zoreth, and countless other factions now saw Earth as a threat. But humanity was not afraid. They had proven that they could face down the might of the galaxy's strongest forces, and they were ready to do it again. Admiral Rivers stood in front of a large map of the galaxy, his face serious and determined. We've made our statement, but we've also made enemies. We need to prepare Earth and its fleet for what's coming. Lieutenant Karen approached him, her voice quiet. Do you think they'll come for us, Admiral? Rivers didn't hesitate. They will. And when they do, we'll be ready. As Earth's fleet regrouped and prepared for the next phase of the conflict, the galaxy held its breath. The victory had been sweet, but the battle was far from over. The Galactic Council's defeat had shaken the very foundations of galactic power, and now, humanity's next move would determine the future of the universe. The consequences of Earth's defiance would echo across the stars, and all eyes were on the human race. Would they rise to the challenge, or would they fall under the weight of the galaxy's collective wrath? Only time would tell. The storm before the dawn. The galaxy was in chaos. Earth's victory over the Galactic Council had ignited a spark that spread like wildfire, affecting every corner of the known universe. Where once the mighty alien fleets ruled the stars, a new power had emerged, one that would not be easily subdued. And yet, despite their recent success, Admiral Rivers knew that the hardest part was still ahead. In the heart of Earth's fleet, aboard the flagship, the atmosphere was tense. The crew had fought hard to bring them this far, but they understood that their actions had left Earth exposed. The silence of space felt heavier than ever before as they awaited the next move from their enemies. Admiral Rivers paced the bridge, his mind racing. He had been in many battles, faced countless enemies, but this was different. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's strength, and now they would test it. The question that lingered in the back of his mind was not if they would strike back, but when. Lieutenant Karen, any new intelligence on Council movements? Rivers asked, breaking the silence. Karen, ever vigilant, was scanning through the latest data. There's chatter from several sectors. Admiral, the Xanthar are preparing for something big, but it's unclear. It could be a retaliation, or a preemptive strike. The Zoreth are regrouping as well. Rivers stood still, absorbing the information. Prepare for the worst. We can't afford to be caught off guard. I want the fleet on high alert. Far across the galaxy, the Xanthar and the Zoreth were already making their moves. The shockwaves from Earth's victory had spread, and their leaders were not content to sit idly by. The balance of power had shifted, and the galactic elite knew that if they allowed Earth to grow stronger, they would lose everything. In a darkened war room, the Xanthar Supreme Commander Varric stood before a holographic display of Earth's solar system. His fingers hovered over the image of the blue planet, his gaze fixed on it with growing fury. Earth has overstepped its bounds, Varric growled. They've shown their hand, but they have no idea what's coming. We will crush their fleet before it can grow any more dangerous. Beside him, his advisor spoke cautiously. Commander, their fleet is formidable. The battle with the Council has shown us that humans are more capable than we thought. Varric's eyes narrowed. Then we'll force them to prove it. Gather our forces. It's time to make Earth understand that their victory was nothing more than a fluke. Meanwhile, on Earth, the sense of looming danger was palpable. The victory over the Galactic Council had given the people of Earth a new sense of pride, but it had also painted a target on their backs. Everywhere, from the highest political offices to the streets below, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. In a secure conference room, Earth's leaders convened to discuss the coming storm. President Alina Dawes sat at the head of the table, surrounded by military advisors, scientists, and strategists. The air was thick with tension as everyone waited for her to speak. "We've proven that we are not to be underestimated," President Dawes began, her voice steady. "But our enemies are powerful. The Xanthar are preparing for a full-scale assault, and the Zorath are making their move. We have no choice but to prepare for the worst." Admiral Rivers, now standing beside her, nodded grimly. "We'll need to strengthen our fleet and our defenses. I recommend deploying additional dreadnoughts and focusing on resource gathering. We cannot rely on the fleet alone to protect Earth." One of the scientists, Dr. Evelyn Torres, spoke up. "We should also consider accelerating the development of the next phase of our defense technologies. The ancient fleet's capabilities are beyond anything the galaxy has seen, but we can't be complacent. We need to be ready for anything." President Dawes met the eyes of each person around the table. "We'll take every measure necessary, but we must remember one thing: we cannot show weakness. If we do, it will be the end of us." As Earth's leaders made their preparations, the Xanthar and Zorath were already advancing. Their fleets, massive and deadly, moved silently toward Earth, preparing for the greatest battle the galaxy had ever seen. The humans, unaware of the full extent of their enemies' plans, worked tirelessly to prepare for the oncoming war. But as the days passed, the pressure continued to mount. Every fleet that arrived from the outer sectors seemed to push the Earth fleet closer to the brink. Admiral Rivers stood once more on the bridge of the flagship, watching the stars stretch out before him. His eyes were tired, but his resolve had never been stronger. The enemy's forces were larger, their tactics more ruthless, but humanity had a secret weapon: its unwavering determination. "This is it," Rivers muttered to himself, watching as the fleet began to move into position. "This is the moment that will define us. Either we stand our ground or we fall." The final preparations were made. Earth's fleet was fully mobilized, every ship in its arsenal ready for the fight. The humans knew that they could not afford to lose, not after everything they had been through. The Galactic Council had underestimated them once, and now their enemies would make the same mistake. As Earth's ships prepared for battle, the fleet's commanders stood ready, their eyes focused on the horizon, knowing that the storm was coming. And when it did, they would not back down. The galaxy watched in anticipation, waiting for the inevitable clash. Would Earth rise to meet the challenge, or would the storm crush them under its weight? The fate of humanity now rested in the hands of those who had already proven that they were willing to fight, no matter the cost. The galaxy on edge. The time had come. Humanity's enemies were closing in, and the galaxy was holding its breath. The Xanthar and Zorath fleets, vast and menacing, moved through space like a tidal wave, poised to crash into Earth's defenses. The tension was unbearable, and the countdown to battle had begun. Admiral Rivers stood at the helm of Earth's flagship, his fingers resting lightly on the control panel. His face was a mask of stoic determination, but inside, the pressure weighed heavily. Every decision, every command he gave, could be the difference between victory and annihilation. The galaxy had already witnessed humanity's potential, but would it be enough to hold back the might of the galaxy's most powerful fleets? "Admiral," Lieutenant Karen's voice broke through the silence. "The Xanthar and Zorath fleets are within range. Our forward reconnaissance has confirmed that they're preparing for a full-scale attack." Rivers exhaled sharply, his mind racing. "Deploy the dreadnoughts and activate the defense grid. We need every ship at the ready." He glanced toward the viewing port, watching as Earth's fleet assembled in the vast expanse of space. Hundreds of ships, from the smallest fighter to the massive ancient dreadnoughts, aligned in formation. The fleet was humanity's greatest asset, and it would have to be enough. Meanwhile, the enemy fleets loomed ever closer. The Xanthar Supreme Commander Varric, a towering figure with cold, calculating eyes, paced aboard his flagship. His mind churned with the knowledge that the coming battle would decide the fate of the galaxy. Earth had proven it could be a formidable force, but the Xanthar were no strangers to war. "We have the numbers," Varric muttered to his advisor, his voice filled with quiet rage. "We have the firepower." Earth's victory over the Council was an anomaly. It won't happen again. Beside him, the advisor, a seasoned tactician, nodded. "We've gathered intelligence on their fleet. The ancient dreadnoughts are formidable, but they're also vulnerable. If we strike hard and fast, we can overwhelm them before they can regroup." Varric's gaze hardened. "We strike with everything we have. No mercy. We'll remind the galaxy who controls the stars." On Earth, the preparations continued. Admiral Rivers stood in the command center, his mind focused on the coming battle. The once quiet space around Earth was now filled with the hum of readiness, as shipyards worked tirelessly to ensure every vessel was prepared for war. The sight of so many ships ready for combat sent a surge of pride through his chest, but he knew that pride would not win the battle. Only strategy, strength, and courage would. "We've trained for this moment," Rivers said, his voice steady, though the weight of the situation was palpable. "Now it's time to show the galaxy what humanity is capable of." Lieutenant Karen stood by his side, her face grim but determined. "And if we lose, Admiral?" Rivers met her eyes, his expression unwavering. "We won't lose. We can't. Earth has already paid the price for underestimating its enemies once. This time, we fight with everything we have. For the people of Earth. For the future." As the fleets of the Xanthar and Zoreth neared, the first exchange of fire was imminent. The vastness of space seemed to shrink as each side prepared to unleash their full might. The tension was unbearable, a collective holding of breath before the storm. Back aboard Earth's flagship, the crew braced themselves, their eyes fixed on the view screen, waiting for the first sign of attack. All ships ready for launch. The communications officer called out. "We're moments away from engagement." Admiral Rivers took one last look at the fleet, the ships that represented humanity's hopes and dreams. "Prepare to engage. The first shot fired will be the signal. Let's make it count." In the Xanthar fleet, Varric stood tall on the bridge of his flagship, his eyes locked on the enemy. The moment had arrived. The Xanthar were prepared, their weapons primed, their ships in formation. They would teach humanity a lesson they would never forget. "Launch all ships," Varric commanded, his voice steady and cold. "Attack with everything." The battle began. The first volley of fire was exchanged, a blinding flash of light illuminating the void of space. Earth's fleet, with its ancient dreadnoughts at the forefront, stood its ground. The energy shields shimmered as the blasts hit, but the ships held firm, their powerful technology keeping them intact. On the other side, the Xanthar and Zoreth forces pushed forward, their ships firing relentlessly, seeking any opening to exploit. The battle was a chaotic symphony of explosions and laser beams, each side pushing the other to the brink. The Xanthar were relentless, their ships charging forward with brutal precision. The Zoreth, known for their cunning tactics, flanked the humans, hoping to catch them off guard. But Admiral Rivers had expected this. Earth's fleet, though smaller in numbers, was a force to be reckoned with. The dreadnoughts, armed with advanced weaponry and shields, held the line, while the smaller ships darted in and out, using their agility to strike at the enemy. "Focus fire on their lid ships," Rivers ordered. "Target their shields and engines. We need to cripple them before they can regroup." The battle raged on for hours, the void of space becoming a graveyard for fallen ships. Both sides had taken heavy losses, but the tides were beginning to turn. Earth's fleet, despite being outnumbered, fought with unmatched resolve. The Xanthar and Zoreth were relentless, but humanity had learned a valuable lesson. Their strength did not come from the size of their fleet, but from their unity, ingenuity, and sheer will to survive. As the battle entered its final stages, the enemy fleets began to retreat. They had underestimated Earth's resolve, and now they were paying the price. The remnants of the Xanthar and Zoreth forces, battered and broken, turned and fled. Admiral Rivers stood on the bridge, watching as the enemy ships scattered into the darkness of space. His heart raced, but he knew the war was far from over. This battle had been won, but the conflict was just beginning. The galaxy had been reminded of humanity's power, but the true test was yet to come. "We've won this round," Rivers said quietly, "but there's more to come. Prepare for the next phase. We must never lose sight of what we fought for." And with that, the stage was set for the future of humanity in a galaxy that would never be the same again. The unseen threat. In the aftermath of the intense battle, Earth's fleet hovered in the cold emptiness of space, victorious but battle-worn. The stars above, once so peaceful, now seemed darker. The blood of war had stained the cosmic stage, and as Admiral Rivers surveyed the field, he could not shake the feeling that something else was lurking, something far worse than they had anticipated. "Admiral, we've sustained heavy damage," Lieutenant Karen reported, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "The dreadnoughts are holding, but many of our smaller ships need immediate repairs." Rivers nodded grimly, his eyes scanning the fleet through the viewport. "We'll need to pull back and regroup. We've won today, but the enemy has shown their hand. We know they won't give up so easily." The Admiral turned, his thoughts weighing heavily on him. The Xanthar and Zoreth may have retreated, but the bloodshed was far from over. The next phase of the war was on the horizon, and the true enemy, something far more insidious, was lurking just beyond their reach. Back on Earth, the celebration was muted. The media hailed their victory, but those who had fought knew better. The war was not over. Rivers knew the enemy was merely licking its wounds, preparing for the next strike. However, what he did not know was that something even darker was stirring, a hidden force that had been biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Aboard a secret command ship, deep within the core of the Zoreth fleet, the supreme commander of the Zoreth, Darvok, studied the data from the recent battle. His once proud fleet had been decimated, but it wasn't the human technology or the dreadnoughts that worried him. It was something else entirely. The Xanthar were strong, Darvok muttered to himself, his sharp gaze fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy. But they were predictable. The humans, they are not. They will not bend. Turning to his subordinates, he gave a cold smile. "We underestimated them before. That was a mistake. But we have something they don't. We have a secret weapon, and it's time to bring it into play." The room fell silent as Darvok's eyes gleamed with malice. The Zoreth commander knew that the galaxy had not seen the last of humanity's power, and the Zoreth were far from defeated. As the days passed, Earth's fleet slowly began its repairs, with the ships returning to their designated docks. The fleet was battered, but not broken. Humanity had come far, and its determination burned brighter than ever. But Admiral Rivers had a nagging suspicion that the enemy was not gone. His gut told him that the true challenge still lay ahead. Late one evening, as he sat alone in the command center, a message came through. It was encrypted, strange in its format. He hesitated for a moment before activating it. "Admiral Rivers," a familiar voice crackled through the static. "This is Commander Torres. We've detected an anomaly on the far edge of the galaxy. It's unlike anything we've seen before. Our sensors are picking up strange readings. Something is out there, and it's heading straight for Earth." Rivers' heart skipped a beat. "What kind of anomaly?" Torres' voice lowered. "It's too early to say, but I'm not talking about any fleet we've ever encountered. This is something different." At that moment, the tension in Rivers' mind deepened. The Zoreth and Xanthar were one thing, but this new threat was something unknown, and that made it all the more dangerous. "Admiral, we've just received word that a new fleet is approaching Earth," Lieutenant Karen said as she entered the room. They don't match any of the known species. The fleet is too advanced." Rivers turned to face her, his mind racing. This was the moment he feared, the moment when humanity's worst nightmare might come true. "Get me everything you can on this fleet," Rivers commanded, standing up. "I want a full report in the next 30 minutes. Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment." In the depths of the galaxy, hidden from the eyes of humanity, a massive ship moved silently through the dark void. Unlike anything humanity had seen, it was colossal, its form sleek and ominous, shrouded in stealth technology that made it nearly invisible. It was not from any known race, and its power was unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. The ship's commander, an enigmatic figure known only as the Harbinger, stood in front of the ship's control panel. His alien form, humanoid but unnervingly perfect, exuded an aura of pure cold calculation. His eyes glowed a faint, unnatural hue, and his voice, when he spoke, was like the whisper of death itself. "They've awakened the ancient fleet," the Harbinger said, his voice calm, but full of dark promise. "We've watched, we've waited. Now it's time for the galaxy to understand that Earth's rise is the beginning of its fall." He turned to face his officers, all equally as imposing and silent. "Prepare the weapons. It's time to show humanity the true meaning of power." Back on Earth, Rivers prepared for the unknown, his thoughts clouded with doubt and fear. The Xanthar and Zoreth were dangerous, but they had never encountered an enemy like this before. Whatever was heading for Earth, it was unlike anything they had ever seen, and Rivers knew that their victory against the Xanthar and Zoreth might mean nothing if they could not face this new terror. The quiet hum of the ship's engines filled the bridge as the crew worked quickly, tension mounting. Each officer knew the importance of their duty, but the uncertainty weighed heavily on them all. No one knew what awaited them in the vast, cold space. "We're ready, Admiral," Lieutenant Karen said, standing beside him. "The fleet is prepared for anything, but we still don't know what we're facing." Rivers clenched his fists. "We've never faced the unknown before. But if this is the fight we need to win to protect our home, then we'll face it with everything we've got." As the unknown fleet drew closer, Rivers stared out at the stars, knowing that the galaxy had just been thrown into a new chapter, one where humanity's resolve would be tested beyond imagination. This time, the fight would not just be for survival, it would be for the future of the entire galaxy. The Harbinger's revelation. The tension across Earth's fleet was palpable. As Admiral Rivers stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring into the cold expanse of space, every eye on the command deck was fixed on him. They were preparing for an encounter with an unknown enemy, an enemy that had not revealed its true strength. It had been days since the fleet received the chilling report of an incoming force that none could comprehend. And still, no one had any answers. "Admiral," Lieutenant Karen's voice broke through his thoughts. "We've intercepted more signals. They're coming closer, but it's different. The readings are fluctuating. It's like they're cloaking themselves, but our systems can still detect them. This new fleet isn't like anything we've ever faced." Rivers exhaled, his brow furrowed in concern. "Keep monitoring. I don't care how advanced their technology is, we need every scrap of information." He had been in countless battles before, but this was different. A cold dread gnawed at him. The Zoreth and Xanthar were formidable, yes, but this was something more. A force so unknown, so alien, that it sent ripples of unease through the fleet's very heart. But there was no time for fear, not now. The unknown fleet was coming, and Earth had to be ready. In the depths of space, the Harbinger stood before the control panel of the enormous ship, a perfect picture of calm. His officers, all towering, inscrutable figures, watched in silence. The ship's propulsion systems hummed quietly as it moved toward Earth, and each passing moment made the approaching confrontation seem all the more inevitable. Admiral Rivers. The Harbinger's voice was low and mechanical, transmitted over the vast distance. You have shown great courage, but courage alone will not save you. It is not just your fleet you face. It is a power far greater than you can imagine. The war you fight is not just for Earth. It is for your place in the universe. The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving the Earth fleet in stunned silence. The crew turned to Rivers, who was already deep in thought. What in the universe was that? Karen asked, her voice thick with uncertainty. Rivers clenched his jaw. That was a warning. They're not here just for Earth. They're here to show us that we are nothing in the grand scheme of the galaxy. The fleet had faced unimaginable enemies before, but this new threat felt like something far beyond that. This was not just about battle. This was about domination. And worse yet, the knowledge that Earth's ancient fleet, so powerful and awe-inspiring, might not be enough to stop them. Back on the alien ship, the Harbinger's metallic eyes glinted as he watched Earth's fleet through the ship's advanced sensors. His race had transcended the limitations of time and space, and now their mission was clear. Earth must be humbled. The humans have something we need, he murmured to his officers. They awakened their ancient fleet, but they do not realize what that fleet represents. It is a relic, a dead force that cannot stand against us. We will show them the true meaning of power. Their fleet will be the least of their worries. He turned to his closest aide, a figure who stood like a shadow in the corner of the room. Prepare the weapon. It is time to see if humanity truly deserves to survive. On Earth, Admiral Rivers paced back and forth, anxiety gnawing at his resolve. His instincts screamed that something more than a mere battle was coming, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He glanced at the star map in front of him, noting the way the mysterious fleet was moving closer with unnerving precision. Admiral, Lieutenant Karen interrupted his thoughts, her voice strained. We've received a new transmission. It's from the Zorath and Xanthar. The transmission appeared on the main screen. A new figure stood before them, a creature that seemed to distort reality itself, its form shifting like an illusion. You are not prepared, it said, its voice rasping like the sound of a dying star. You do not know what you have awakened, Admiral Rivers. The fleet you command is a relic, and the forces you face are far older, far more powerful than anything you have known. The galaxy has its rulers, and humanity is not one of them. Rivers felt a chill, deeper than the cold of space, creeping up his spine. The Zorath and Xanthar, their enemies, had joined forces with this new, even darker power. It seemed that humanity had stumbled into a conflict far beyond their understanding. We may be the underdogs, but that has always been our strength, Rivers said, his voice growing firm, despite the growing dread. We've beaten the odds before. We'll do it again. As Rivers continued to strategize, aboard the Harbinger's flagship, the Harbinger turned to face his second-in-command, his expression unreadable. Have they received the message? The Harbinger asked. They have, his officer responded, voice devoid of emotion. The humans now know the scale of the conflict they've stepped into. They understand they are facing something far more dangerous than anything they've encountered. The Harbinger nodded, his face remaining an emotionless mask. They are still far too weak to comprehend what is coming. Let them cling to their hope, to their fleet. It will not save them. Earth's day is over. Back on Earth, Admiral Rivers stood at the helm of his ship, watching the fleet he commanded prepare for battle. The fleet had been put to the test many times, but now, as the dark shadow of the enemy fleet loomed on the horizon, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was not just another fight. It was an extinction-level event for humanity. We're going to need more than our ships to survive this, he muttered to himself. The feeling in the pit of his stomach wasn't just fear, it was the weight of realization. The future of Earth, of humanity itself, hung on the edge of a blade. As the dark fleet drew nearer, the Earth's fleet readied itself for the impossible. The confrontation begins. The tension was suffocating on Earth's flagship. Every crew member aboard felt it. an uneasy, foreboding energy that seemed to pulse through the air. They knew this battle would be different from all the others. It wasn't just about a fight for survival. It was about humanity's place in the universe. The enemy fleet was too vast, its technology too advanced, and the unknown forces behind it were terrifying. But one thing was clear: they could not afford to lose. Admiral Rivers stood before the holographic display, watching as the unknown fleet advanced. The image was distorted, like the entire fleet existed in a different reality, flickering and shifting. It was almost as if the laws of physics didn't apply to them. "Admiral," Lieutenant Karen's voice cracked over the tense silence. "Their fleet, it's cloaking itself. It's like nothing we've seen before." Rivers tightened his grip on the railing. The feeling of being watched, of being outmatched, gnawed at him. "Keep tracking them. I don't care what it takes. We need to know exactly where they are before they make their move." The crew moved in a flurry of activity, but Rivers couldn't tear his gaze away from the swirling hologram of the enemy fleet. They were preparing for something. He could feel it. Something far worse than a mere attack was coming. Meanwhile, aboard the Harbinger, the alien commanders stood in cold silence, waiting for the order. The fleet had reached its final destination, orbiting the distant moon just outside of Earth's atmosphere. The distance between Earth and its attackers was now negligible. Every second stretched endlessly, weighed down by the impending violence. "The time is now," the Harbinger said quietly, his voice cold as ice. "Prepare the weapons." His command was obeyed without question. The alien officers worked in unison, pulling levers and pushing buttons to activate a weapon of unimaginable power. Their ships, massive and elegant, seemed to hum with dark energy as the weapon systems powered up. It was a weapon that could crack planets, obliterate entire fleets, and change the balance of power in the galaxy. "The humans will realize too late that they are not the ones in control," the Harbinger whispered to himself. "Their hope is fleeting." Back on Earth's flagship, Admiral Rivers was calculating their next move. His mind raced with possibilities. The unknown fleet's movements seemed erratic, and the signals they sent were inconsistent, as though the fleet was constantly shifting in spacetime. They weren't just outclassed, they were being outsmarted. "What's their next move?" Karen asked urgently, scanning the data. Rivers hesitated. He knew that the first strike would be crucial. If they were going to stand a chance, they needed to take the fight to the enemy. He glanced at the holographic map. Earth's fleet was ready to launch an assault, but there was something about the approaching force that made him feel uneasy. "Hold off on the attack," Rivers ordered. "I need to know their weakness before we make a move. We don't know what we're dealing with here." As soon as the words left his mouth, the ship's alarms began blaring, signaling an incoming assault. Rivers' heart pounded in his chest. "Too late," he muttered under his breath. "Brace for impact." The crew scrambled to their stations, preparing for the inevitable. They knew the moment had come. On the enemy ships, the Harbinger stood in his command center, staring coldly at the tactical display. The humans had finally made their move. His lips curled into a cruel smile. "Fire the first salvo." In an instant, a torrent of energy erupted from the enemy ships, flooding space with destructive beams of energy. The lights flickered and the entire flagship shuddered as the first of the attacks reached Earth's defenses. It was like a thunderclap in the vacuum of space, and yet there was no sound, only a deafening silence as the world seemed to hold its breath. Rivers braced himself, gripping the armrest of his chair. His crew was in chaos, trying to adjust to the shockwave. He could feel the heat of the blast, even through the shields. The flagship rocked again, the hull creaking as the ship absorbed the incoming fire. The systems flared with warnings, and the crew fought to maintain control. "Shields at 40%, Admiral," Karen yelled. "We're losing power to the engines." Rivers gritted his teeth, his mind racing as the battle began in earnest. "Divert all power to the shields. Return fire. Now." The command deck hummed with activity as the Earth fleet retaliated. They were outgunned, but not out of the fight. Earth's fleet had more than just weapons. They had determination. And it was that fierce spirit that might be their only hope. The Harbinger's fleet continued to rain down destruction, but the human ships, wounded and battered as they were, held their ground. For every strike from the enemy, they fired back with everything they had. The space around them erupted in flashes of blinding light as the two forces clashed with all the fury of a cosmic storm. "We're not giving up," Rivers muttered, barely able to hear himself over the chaos. "Not now. Not ever." As the battle raged on, the Harbinger's fleet began to reveal its true power. Massive, swirling energy fields that bent the very fabric of space itself. They were not just fighting in space. They were battling in a shifting, fluctuating reality where the laws of physics could be rewritten at will. Rivers saw it, a new tactic emerging from the enemy. "They're distorting space. We're in their gravity well," he yelled. "Get us out of here now." It was a race against time. Earth's fleet was on the edge of collapse. But Rivers had one last trick up his sleeve. The ancient fleet, long dormant, held secrets. Ancient weapons that no one had dared to use for centuries. Now they might be Earth's only hope. Back on Earth's flagship, Rivers stood tall, staring into the void where the battle was unfolding. His mind was made up. The fight had just begun. "Launch the ancient fleet," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding him. This is it. The power of the ancient fleet would either be their salvation or their doom. Unleashing the ancient fleet. The Earth flagship trembled under the relentless barrage of energy blasts. The enemy's superior firepower was proving to be a devastating force, and the human fleet was slowly being overwhelmed. But in the heart of the flagship, Admiral Rivers' resolve remained unshaken. The time had come to risk it all. "Launch the ancient fleet," Rivers repeated, his voice calm but firm, despite the storm of destruction outside. "Now." The crew exchanged nervous glances, but none questioned his command. They all knew the stories, the old myths that had been whispered through generations of Earth's finest soldiers. The ancient fleet, hidden away in the dark corners of the solar system for centuries, was about to come to life. Lieutenant Karen hurried to the communication panel. "Sir, launching sequence initiated," she announced. Rivers nodded, his eyes fixed on the main view screen as the holographic display flickered. The universe outside seemed to hold its breath. The silent abyss of space, once an endless canvas, was now a battleground. Slowly, one by one, massive ships began to emerge from the dark void. They were old, beyond old, ancient beyond imagination. These ships were relics from a time long forgotten, their designs so foreign, so out of place that they seemed almost surreal. Their hulls gleamed with an eerie metallic sheen, reflecting the light of distant stars. The sheer size of the ships was overwhelming. Each one was a city in itself, bristling with weapons and technology that humanity had long since lost the knowledge to fully comprehend. Their engines roared to life, shaking the very fabric of space as they powered up. Admiral Rivers watched as the ancient fleet took its place in the formation, the massive ships aligning in perfect order. It was an awe-inspiring sight, a sea of colossal vessels, their presence a testament to humanity's hidden strength. "Begin firing," Rivers ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. "We're going to make them regret ever underestimating us." On the enemy fleet, the Harbinger watched in growing disbelief as the ancient ships emerged from the darkness. He had thought they had broken humanity, that they had forced Earth into a corner from which there was no escape. But now, as he witnessed the awakening of the ancient fleet, a flicker of doubt began to creep into his mind. What are they?" he muttered, staring at the visual feeds of the incoming ships. The Harbinger had known many races, many civilizations, but nothing like this. The sheer power emanating from the human fleet was unlike anything he had ever encountered. These ships were not just relics, they were weapons of unimaginable destruction. "Focus fire on the largest of the ships." The Harbinger barked, trying to regain control of the situation. We need to stop them before they gain full strength. But the ancient fleet was relentless. As the enemy tried to counterattack, Earth's ships, fueled by centuries of forgotten technology, unleashed their fury. Energy beams tore through space, cutting through enemy ships with surgical precision. The first volley of attacks from the ancient fleet created a storm of sparks and explosions as the enemy ships began to crumble under the overwhelming force. Rivers watched in awe as the ancient ships fired in perfect synchrony. Each shot was deliberate, powerful, and destructive. The crew had no idea what they were truly capable of, but the ancient fleet's power was a game-changer. It was as if Earth had just unleashed a forgotten force that could rival the entire Galactic Council. Direct hit on the lead vessel, Karen shouted, her voice filled with awe. The Harbinger's flagship rocked violently as the first of the ancient ships landed a hit. The massive ship began to shudder, the lights flickering as the hull cracked open, exposing the raw energy within. The once unyielding Council fleet was now in disarray. On Earth's flagship, the crew stood in stunned silence. They had always known their fleet was powerful, but this, the sheer destructive might of the ancient ships, was beyond their wildest imaginations. "We've done it," Karen whispered, unable to hold back a grin. But Rivers wasn't celebrating. He knew this was just the beginning. The Galactic Council wouldn't fall so easily, and the enemy's fleet still outnumbered them. Earth had only gained a brief advantage. "This isn't over yet," Rivers said grimly. "Prepare for the next wave. The fight has only just begun." As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Galactic Council was not going to back down. The Harbinger, now fully aware of the ancient fleet's power, regrouped and ordered a new offensive. But the momentum had shifted. The tide of battle had turned, and humanity was no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for victory. Back in the heart of Earth's flagship, Rivers knew they had to keep pushing forward. The ancient fleet had given them the upper hand, but it was only a matter of time before the enemy adapted. The Galactic Council was ruthless, and their strength was not to be underestimated. "Divert all resources to the ancient fleet's support systems," Rivers commanded. "We need to ensure they have the firepower to finish this." The ancient fleet was a force unlike any other, but Earth's true strength lay not in the ships themselves, but in the indomitable will of its people. The human spirit was unmatched, a force of nature that could not be broken. As the two fleets clashed in the vastness of space, one thing was clear: Earth had unleashed something far more dangerous than anyone could have anticipated. And the Galactic Council, for the first time in their existence, was starting to feel fear. The tide turns. The stars in the sky above Earth's flagship burned like distant beacons, flickering as if reflecting the chaos of the war unfolding below. The ancient fleet, now fully engaged, had brought a new wave of terror to the Galactic Council. With every passing moment, their grip on the battlefield weakened. Earth's ships, powered by forgotten technologies, surged forward, their energy beams slashing through space like searing knives. The enemy fleet, once so confident in its superiority, was now in full retreat. The Harbinger, who had stood at the helm of the Galactic Council's power, was no longer as certain as he once was. The tide of war was changing, and for the first time in his long reign, the Harbinger felt the sting of panic. Inside Earth's flagship, Admiral Rivers remained calm amidst the overwhelming waves of victory. He stood in the war room, his eyes fixed on the holographic map that displayed the positions of both fleets. His mind worked rapidly, calculating the next steps with precision. "The enemy is retreating, but we can't let them escape," Rivers said quietly, almost to himself. "We must finish this, or they'll regroup and come back stronger." Lieutenant Karen, standing at his side, nodded. "Understood, sir. We'll need to push harder, cut off their escape routes." Rivers turned, locking eyes with her. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. We're fighting for every world they've ever conquered, for every species they've ever oppressed. On the enemy flagship, the Harbinger's frustration mounted. His fleet had suffered catastrophic losses, and his command center had descended into chaos. His officers scrambled to regain control, but it was clear that the Galactic Council's dominance was slipping away. "We can't stop them," the Harbinger said, his voice low but furious. "The ancient fleet, it's too powerful." He clenched his fists, his mind racing. The Council had faced challenges before, but this was different. This human fleet, powered by a forgotten strength, had turned the tide of the war in a matter of hours. It wasn't just their ships that made them dangerous. It was the humans themselves. There was something unpredictable about them, something the Galactic Council had never anticipated. "Withdraw all remaining ships," the Harbinger ordered with cold finality. "Regroup and retreat. We need time to rethink our strategy." The order to retreat rippled through the enemy fleet. The remaining ships, battered and bruised, began to turn and flee, their engines sputtering as they tried to escape the relentless barrage of the ancient fleet. But Earth's fleet wasn't about to let them off that easily. Rivers had anticipated this move and had already deployed a secondary wave of interceptors, smaller, faster ships designed for pursuit. "Lock onto their retreating vessels," Rivers commanded, his voice unwavering. "We can't let them regroup. Not now." Lieutenant Karen relayed the order, and the fleet's interceptors surged forward, their sleek forms darting through the void of space with deadly precision. They were swift, relentless, and determined to make sure that the Galactic Council would not have the chance to return. As the enemy fleet scattered, the Harbinger could only watch in helpless fury. His ships were being picked off one by one, unable to escape the overwhelming firepower of Earth's fleet. In his private chambers aboard his flagship, the Harbinger paced back and forth, his mind racing for a solution. His species had long been the rulers of the galaxy, and now, in the face of a force they could not understand, their reign was on the brink of collapse. "There has to be a way," he muttered to himself. "There has to be a way to stop them." But as the last of his ships were picked off by the relentless human pursuit, the Harbinger's hopes for a quick victory began to fade. For the first time in his life, he questioned the invincibility of the Galactic Council. Meanwhile, aboard Earth's flagship, Admiral Rivers could sense the shift in the atmosphere. The retreating enemy fleet signaled a clear victory, but there was no time for celebration. "Not yet. Have we confirmed their total withdrawal?" Rivers asked. "Not yet, sir," Karen replied, her fingers flying over the controls. "We're still tracking some of their smaller ships. It looks like they're trying to regroup at a nearby system." "Good," Rivers said, his voice cold. "Set a course for the system. We finish this now." The chase continued through the vast expanse of space as Earth's interceptors and ancient fleet pressed on, determined to ensure the Galactic Council would never pose a threat to them again. Every passing moment brought Earth closer to securing its future, but Rivers knew that the final blow still lay ahead. "Admiral," Karen said, her voice tense, "we've detected a large fleet forming at the edge of the system. It's the Galactic Council, almost everything they have left." Rivers' expression hardened. This was it, the final showdown. Earth had already dealt a devastating blow to the Council, but now they had to face the full force of the enemy's remaining strength. "We end this today," Rivers said, his voice unwavering. "No retreat, no surrender." As Earth's fleet prepared for the final confrontation, the remnants of the Galactic Council's forces rallied together, desperate to hold on to their power. The next few moments would decide the fate of the galaxy. Admiral Rivers, standing at the helm of Earth's flagship, knew one thing for certain. Humanity's future was no longer in question. But the cost of victory would be high, and the final battle was fast approaching. The final stand. The silence of space was broken only by the hum of Earth's flagship as it surged toward the edge of the enemy-controlled system. The vast void stretched before them, an ocean of darkness, as if waiting for the inevitable clash. Every ship in Earth's fleet had been meticulously prepared for this moment. Every officer, every crew member, had braced themselves for the final confrontation. The Galactic Council had made its last stand. Admiral Rivers stood at the center of the command room, his eyes scanning the holographic display of the battlefield. The map was a sea of flashing red dots, the remaining ships of the Galactic Council clustered together in a final attempt to consolidate their strength. He knew the risks, but Earth's fleet was no longer fighting just for survival. They were fighting for their future. The time had come to put an end to the Council's reign once and for all. "Sir," Lieutenant Karen's voice broke through the tension in the room. "The enemy is preparing for a counteroffensive. They're positioning their flagship at the center of their formation." Rivers nodded, his jaw tight. "We've been expecting this. They'll try to make their last stand with everything they have left. It's all or nothing." He turned to the rest of the bridge crew. "Prepare the fleet. Lock onto their flagship. We pierce through their lines and crush them once and for all." Across the battlefield, the Galactic Council's remaining forces were frantically adjusting their positions. The Harbinger, now aboard the Council's final flagship, stood before the panoramic view of space, watching as Earth's fleet approached. His mind was a whirlwind of desperation and fury. "This is it," the Harbinger muttered to himself. "Either we win today, or the galaxy falls into chaos." He turned to his officers. "Everything we have left. All weapons, all ships. We won't let them take us down so easily." The officers nodded, knowing the gravity of the situation. The last of the Council's warships moved into position around their flagship, a final desperate attempt to protect the heart of their fleet. But even as they prepared for the battle, the Harbinger could sense the fear in his crew. The victory they had once taken for granted was slipping away. Back on Earth's flagship, Admiral Rivers felt the weight of the moment. It had been a long and grueling fight, but now they were at the precipice of victory. He knew that no matter what happened, Earth had already made its mark on the galaxy. But there was still one thing left to do. "We don't stop until it's done," Rivers said, his voice steady but full of resolve. "They tried to wipe out our future. We're going to make sure they never threaten us again." The ship's engines roared as they entered firing range, and the fleet followed in close formation, their weapons primed and ready. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The two fleets collided in a blinding explosion of energy. The space between the ships lit up like a storm, with beams of intense firepower trading back and forth. Earth's ships, agile and quick, darted through the enemy's lines, landing devastating blows to their largest vessels. The Galactic Council, overwhelmed by the ferocity of the assault, fought back with everything they had. But it wasn't enough. The Harbinger watched in disbelief as his ships were torn apart one by one. The battle had been swift, brutal, and decisive. No longer able to maintain their cohesion, the remaining Council forces began to crumble under the pressure. Panic spread like wildfire through the enemy ranks. The once mighty fleet was falling apart. On Earth's flagship, Admiral Rivers gave the order to focus all firepower on the enemy flagship. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched the final showdown unfold. The Harbinger's ship loomed large on the holographic display, a symbol of the Galactic Council's last hope. "All weapons, target the enemy flagship," Rivers commanded. "This ends now." The flagship's massive weapons array powered up, and a barrage of deadly energy beams surged toward the Council's vessel. The enemy flagship shook under the assault, its shields faltering under the overwhelming force. A deafening explosion rippled through space as the flagship's outer defenses gave way. Inside the flagship, the Harbinger clenched his fists, his expression twisted with fury. He watched as his last line of defense was obliterated, and he knew that defeat was inevitable. "We've lost," the Harbinger whispered, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "The galaxy is lost." With the destruction of the enemy flagship, the remaining Council forces were left without direction. Earth's fleet pushed forward with relentless precision, picking off the last of the enemy ships. The tide had turned, and victory was now within their grasp. Admiral Rivers stood at the helm, watching as the final remnants of the Galactic Council were swept away. The battle was over, but the cost had been great. Lives had been lost, and sacrifices made. But Earth had triumphed, and the galaxy would never forget the price that had been paid for that victory. The Harbinger's fleet was shattered, their once proud empire reduced to nothing more than scattered debris floating in the void. The Galactic Council had fallen, and Earth's ancient fleet had become the symbol of humanity's strength and resilience. As Earth's fleet regrouped and prepared to return home, Admiral Rivers allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. The war was over, but the journey was just beginning. The galaxy was a vast and unknown place, but humanity had proven that it would no longer be ruled by anyone but themselves. "We've won," Rivers said quietly, his voice filled with a quiet pride. "But this is only the beginning." As the fleet turned toward Earth, a new chapter in the story of humanity began, one written by their own hands. A new dawn for humanity. The silence of space seemed to hang in the air like a fragile thread, stretched taut by the weight of what had just transpired. The final remnants of the Galactic Council's once feared empire were now scattered across the void, broken and defeated. Earth's fleet, though battered and scarred, had emerged victorious. But what came next? Admiral Rivers stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring out at the battlefield. The destruction was vast, and the quiet aftermath of battle was almost surreal. The galaxy, which had once seemed so far away, so unreachable, was now within their grasp. Humanity had proven that it could not only defend itself, but had the power to shape the future of the stars. His voice, when it finally broke the silence, was calm but filled with a deep, resolute determination. "We've done it, but this is only the beginning. The galaxy is ours now. We've earned it." Lieutenant Karen, standing at the communications station, looked up with a solemn expression. "Sir, the remaining council factions are trying to regroup. Some of their leaders are already making moves, preparing for a new phase. They won't take defeat lightly." Rivers nodded slowly, his thoughts drifting to the bigger picture. "We knew this wouldn't be the end. We've only struck the first blow. The galaxy will need to see that Earth is not just a planet to be ruled, but a force to be reckoned with, and we'll make sure they understand that." As the fleet began its journey back to Earth, the crew, though exhausted, felt a sense of accomplishment that had never been experienced before. Their mission had not just been to win a war, it had been to ensure humanity's place in the universe. And they had done it. Earth was now a power to be feared, respected, and admired. Admiral Rivers knew that the real work was just beginning. The victory over the Galactic Council had shaken the foundations of power in the galaxy, but there were still other threats, other factions, who had watched with both awe and fear. It was only a matter of time before those who had once dismissed humanity as insignificant would come to recognize its true potential. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime. A message. He looked up at the screen, and the face of Earth's president appeared, framed by the familiar backdrop of the command center. "Admiral Rivers," the president said, their voice steady but heavy with emotion. "I know this battle has been long and costly, but you've led us to victory. Your leadership has ensured humanity's future. We'll never forget the sacrifices made." Rivers saluted the screen, his expression solemn but proud. "Thank you, sir. We've done what was needed, but the galaxy is still a vast and dangerous place. Earth's victory is just the first step in securing our place." The president nodded, understanding the weight of Rivers' words. "And we'll support you every step of the way. Humanity's future is in your hands now. Take care of it." The fleet made its way home, and as Earth's ships entered the solar system, the sight of their home planet filled the screens. The familiar blue and green orb looked the same as it had before the war, but now it represented something much more. It was a symbol of strength, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. Admiral Rivers felt a deep sense of pride as he looked at the Earth, The war was over, and humanity had emerged victorious. But there was still so much to do. Earth was now a target for those who would seek to test its new power, and Rivers knew that the galaxy would not simply allow them to settle into peace. There would be more battles ahead, more challenges to face. But humanity had proven its worth. "We've shown them," Rivers murmured to himself, a quiet confidence in his voice, "and they won't forget what we've done." In the coming weeks, the galaxy would begin to understand the full extent of Earth's power. The Galactic Council, though fractured, still held sway over a number of systems. But with their fleet shattered and their leaders in disarray, Earth would use this time to consolidate its position. Diplomacy, alliances, and trade agreements would follow. But above all, Earth would stand firm, not as a passive observer, but as a leader in the new galactic order. The crew of Earth's flagship had earned their place in history. They had not just defeated an empire, they had changed the course of the future. And as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the ripple effects of their victory would be felt across the galaxy. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted. The victory was not just military, it was symbolic. Humanity had proven that it would no longer be a species ignored or overlooked. They had the power to shape their destiny. And now, the galaxy would know it. Admiral Rivers sat in his office, looking out over the bustling city below. His mind was already turning to the future, preparing for the inevitable challenges that lay ahead. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of peace. For the first time in a long while, the galaxy seemed a little less vast and a little more like home. The next chapter was about to begin. The hidden enemy. The victory over the Galactic Council had been hard won, but the peace that followed was brief. As Earth's fleet continued to solidify its hold over key systems, a new threat loomed in the shadows, one that no one had anticipated. Admiral Rivers stood at the helm of the flagship once more, watching the stars outside, deep in thought. Victory had come at a great cost, and although Earth now held a commanding position in the galaxy, there were still whispers of something darker, something more sinister waiting beyond the veil of space. "We've been too quiet," Rivers muttered to himself. "The galaxy isn't done with us yet." Lieutenant Karen, now standing at the communications station, looked up at him, sensing the unease in his voice. "You think they'll come after us again, sir?" Rivers nodded slowly. "There's always a bigger fish. The council may be gone, but we've only stirred the waters. There are other factions, smaller, more covered, that have been watching. They might think Earth is an easy target. On the outer rim of the galaxy, a secretive faction, known only as the Dark Syndicate, had been quietly gathering strength. Their operations were shrouded in mystery, and few knew exactly who their leaders were. What was known, however, was their ruthlessness. The Syndicate had long operated in the shadows, doing business with anyone who paid the right price. They had no love for the Galactic Council, but neither did they care for the rise of humanity. In their eyes, Earth's victory had upset the delicate balance of power in the galaxy, and that could not be allowed to stand. Their leader, known only as the Shadow, was a figure few had ever seen and lived to tell the tale. But whispers of his presence were enough to send shivers down the spines of even the bravest warriors. And now, the Shadow had decided that it was time to act. Back on Earth, Admiral Rivers received unsettling news. A new fleet, unregistered and unknown, had appeared on the far edge of the solar system. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered, silent, swift, and deadly. "Sir, we've detected a fleet. They're not responding to any hails," Lieutenant Karen reported. Her voice was calm, but there was an underlying tension that made Rivers' instincts flare. "Get me a direct line to command," Rivers ordered, already preparing for the worst. The message was clear. Earth was once again in danger. But this time, it was different. This enemy wasn't a conventional force. It was hidden, unseen, and ready to strike without warning. The Dark Syndicate was not like the Galactic Council. They operated in the shadows, gathering intelligence, building alliances, and preparing for the moment when they could finally challenge humanity. Earth's victory had made them wary, but also resentful. They saw the rise of Earth as a threat to their influence and control over the galaxy, and they would do whatever it took to stop it. Admiral Rivers knew the odds were stacked against them. He had been through wars, battles, and skirmishes, but this was different. There was no clear enemy to engage, no decisive strategy to follow, just the knowledge that an unknown force was waiting for the right moment to strike. "Prepare for anything," Rivers said, his voice steady but carrying the weight of leadership. "We don't know who or what we're up against, but we're not going to let them get the upper hand." As the fleet prepared for what was coming, tensions ran high. Earth's forces had been tested time and time again, but this new threat posed a challenge like none they had faced before. For the first time, there was a sense of uncertainty in the air. Admiral Rivers couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every shadow seemed to hold a potential danger, every unexplained signal a sign of something lurking just out of sight. The Dark Syndicate's methods were like a ghost in the machine, their presence felt but never seen. They knew how to stay hidden, how to avoid detection. But Rivers refused to be intimidated. Earth had come too far, and humanity's spirit was too strong to be crushed by the unknown. In the quiet of the command center, Lieutenant Karen approached Rivers. "Sir, we've received another transmission. This one's encrypted." "Send it through," Rivers replied, his mind racing as he prepared for whatever came next. The screen flickered to life, and a message appeared, transmitted in an alien language. Rivers stared at the screen, his mind working quickly to decipher the meaning. The message was simple but chilling. "You are not alone. The shadow watches." The realization hit Rivers like a bolt of lightning. The Dark Syndicate had already made their move. The game had changed, and Earth was once again at the center of a galactic storm. But this time, they would be prepared. The shadow might think they could hide in the darkness, but Earth had learned to fight in the light, and they would do whatever it took to keep their place in the galaxy. The fleet prepared to move out, but Rivers knew one thing for certain. This war wouldn't be fought in the open. The real battle would take place in the shadows, where the enemy always had the advantage. And Earth's forces would have to adapt, or risk losing everything. Admiral Rivers stood tall, his resolve hardening. "They think we're easy targets. They think we're vulnerable. But they're about to learn just how wrong they are." The war was far from over. The shadow's web. The tension in the command center was palpable. As the fleet moved into position, Admiral Rivers stood at the front, eyes narrowed as he stared out at the void of space. The mysterious fleet, now identified as part of the Dark Syndicate, was still lurking at the edges of their detection range, moving in unpredictable patterns. It was a ghostly presence, seemingly waiting for the right moment to strike. Rivers wasn't the only one who felt the unease. The entire crew could sense it. Earth's fleet had been victorious before, but this time, the enemy was different, silent, unseen, and patient. The fleet had been built for large-scale battles, not to fight against the shadows. The Dark Syndicate was elusive. Their ships were unlike anything Earth had ever encountered. Advanced, silent, and swift, they seemed to slip between the stars, their presence only revealed through faint energy readings that would vanish the moment they were detected. The shadow, their leader, had never been seen. It was as if the Syndicate was just an extension of the darkness itself, a mysterious entity hiding in plain sight. And yet, Rivers knew one thing for certain. Earth was being hunted, and the Syndicate wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. The first move came without warning. A sudden burst of energy flared on the radar, followed by a cascade of more anomalous readings. Earth's fleet had been drawn into a trap. Shields up, all ships ready for combat. Rivers barked, his voice steady but filled with urgency. The crew scrambled to their stations, prepared for the fight they knew was coming. They couldn't see the enemy, but the Syndicate wasn't making it easy to stay hidden anymore. Lieutenant Karen's fingers danced across the console. "Sir, they're moving in from all sides. Their ships are cloaked, but we can track their energy signatures. We'll need to move fast." Rivers clenched his jaw. "We fight in the dark. Then, they want a battle. We'll give them one." As the fleet braced for impact, the first of the Syndicate's ships uncloaked. It was like a nightmare brought to life. A massive, sleek vessel, darker than the void itself, with strange angular designs and weapons that shimmered with an eerie, unnatural light. "Open fire," Rivers commanded, his voice unwavering. Earth's fleet unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, but the Syndicate ship was fast, almost too fast to track. It darted and weaved, like a predator in the night, every move calculated to avoid damage while returning fire with deadly precision. The battle raged, but the enemy's superior agility and stealth were starting to take their toll. Earth's ships struggled to land effective hits, and the cloaked Syndicate ships picked them off one by one, slowly but surely. It felt as though the odds were stacked against them, with no way to land a decisive blow. Hours passed in the dark abyss of space, and Rivers could feel the weight of the battle pressing on his shoulders. The enemy was relentless, never giving Earth's forces a chance to recover. Their tactics were like nothing he had ever seen before, fighting from the shadows, striking quickly and fading back into the darkness before retaliation was even possible. But Rivers was not one to back down. "We need to find their leader," he said, pacing the bridge, his mind working furiously. "The Shadow. If we can take him down, we can cripple the Syndicate's operations." Lieutenant Karen looked up, her expression grim. "How do we even begin to find someone who doesn't want to be found?" "He's a ghost." Rivers stood still, thinking. Then a realization hit him. "We don't look for him. We force him to come to us." The plan was set into motion quickly. Earth's fleet, battered but unbroken, pulled back into a defensive formation. Their ships turned their attention to the dark Syndicate's vessels, creating the illusion of vulnerability. The Syndicate's ships, seeing an opening, closed in, moving in for what they believed was an easy kill. But it was a trap. The moment the Syndicate ships moved in for the attack, Earth's fleet unleashed everything they had. The massive barrage of energy fire lit up the black expanse of space, a flurry of colors and sounds that reverberated through the fleet. The Syndicate's ships attempted to dodge and weave, but they were too close now, too exposed. For a brief moment, Earth's fleet seemed to have the upper hand. The Syndicate fleet's cloaking devices faltered under the intense fire, revealing their positions. Ships collided in a chaotic dance of fire and destruction, the battlefield a blur of explosions and debris. Then, in the heart of the battle, Earth's scanners detected something. A signature, faint but distinct, in the center of the chaos. It was him, the Shadow. Admiral Rivers' heart raced as the dark figure of the Syndicate leader's ship appeared on the radar. It was like staring into the abyss itself, silent, foreboding, and commanding. Rivers' mind locked onto the target. This was it. They had finally found him. "Target the Shadow ship. Prepare everything we have," Rivers said, his voice calm but laced with purpose. "We end this now." The fleet closed in, weapons charging. But the Syndicate leader wasn't going down easily. His ship surged forward, a ghostly silhouette cutting through the debris. Earth's fleet fired, but the Shadow's ship seemed to warp around the attacks, dodging and weaving as though it was part of the very darkness itself. But the Syndicate leader underestimated Earth's resolve. With precise coordination, Earth's forces launched a final, devastating strike. The Shadow's ship faltered, its cloaking device flickering as it was hit. In the ensuing chaos, the elusive leader of the Dark Syndicate, the Shadow, was revealed at last. But the damage had already been done. His fleet was in disarray, their ranks shattered, their leader vulnerable. Admiral Rivers stood at the helm, watching as the Shadow ship sputtered and fell, defeated. The battle wasn't over yet, but Earth had sent a message. The Syndicate's hidden web of deception had been torn apart, and the galaxy now knew that humanity was no longer the underdog. The real war was only just beginning, but with every victory, Earth's grip on the galaxy grew stronger, and no one, not even the shadow, could hide in the darkness forever. The price of vengeance. The silence that followed the defeat of the shadow was deafening. Space, vast and empty as it was, seemed to hold its breath. Earth's fleet had achieved a monumental victory, but the cost was high. The once proud ships that made up Earth's defenses were now battered and scarred, floating in the debris of the battle. Yet despite the damage, the victory felt hollow. The war wasn't over, and they knew it. Admiral Rivers stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring out into the vastness of space. The stars glittered like cold, distant memories, a reminder of what they had fought for. The fleet had won the battle, but the war against the Dark Syndicate was far from over. The shadow may have fallen, but the Syndicate was still lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike again. "Admiral, we've received word from Earth Command," Lieutenant Karen said, her voice cutting through Rivers' thoughts. "The government wants an immediate report. They're concerned about the Syndicate's next move." Rivers turned away from the viewport and faced his officers, his face set in grim determination. "We've bought Earth some time, but it's not enough. The Syndicate won't be taken down so easily." As Rivers moved toward the communication console to speak with Earth Command, the enormity of the task ahead weighed heavily on him. He had led his fleet to victory, but now came the hardest part: what to do next. The shadow was gone, but the Syndicate was a vast, interconnected network. Without their leader, they would become more dangerous, more unpredictable. "We've dealt the Syndicate a severe blow, but we can't afford to be complacent," Rivers said to his crew, his voice low but firm. "We need to press forward, gather intel, and expose every dark corner of their operations." Karen nodded. "And if they come after Earth again?" Rivers' jaw tightened. "We'll be ready." Back on Earth, the Council had already begun strategizing their next move. Earth's government, still recovering from the shock of the Syndicate's initial attack, was scrambling to reorganize their military. The loss of so many lives during the first wave of the Syndicate's assault was something they couldn't ignore. But there was also the matter of the fleet, the ancient fleet, the one that had been hidden away for centuries. Rivers knew that the fleet's power was still a mystery to most of humanity. It was a weapon that had been dormant for far too long, its true purpose hidden. If they were to fight the Syndicate, they would need to unlock every secret the fleet held. The decision was made. Earth would send a special team to investigate the fleet's hidden archives, searching for any additional weapons or information that might help them in the ongoing war. The team, led by Lieutenant Karen, arrived at the hidden facility deep within Earth's underground bases. The location had been sealed off for centuries, known only to the highest-ranking officials. It was a place where humanity's ancient technologies had been stored, protected from the rest of the world. Now, it would be the key to Earth's survival. As they descended deeper into the facility, the air grew colder, and the walls seemed to pulse with an energy that was both ancient and unsettling. The team's steps echoed in the silence, the only sound the hum of machinery long dormant. Lieutenant Karen led the way, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. "We're getting close," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "This place holds the answers to everything." The facility's central chamber was massive, a cavernous room filled with holographic displays and dormant machinery. It was clear that this had once been the heart of Earth's military power, a place where the weapons of the ancient fleet had been designed and stored. But now, it was a tomb. Karen and her team began to scan the area, their equipment whirring as they searched for anything that might reveal the fleet's hidden capabilities. It didn't take long before they uncovered something that stopped them all in their tracks, a large, sealed vault hidden behind a thick layer of dust and corrosion. "This is it," Karen said, her voice barely a whisper. "The vault that holds the secrets of the ancient fleet." The vault was a masterpiece of engineering, sealed with a complex locking mechanism that required the full attention of the team. Hours passed as they worked tirelessly, deciphering the codes and unlocking the mechanism. When the vault finally opened, What they found inside was beyond anything they had ever imagined. Rows upon rows of weapons, energy cores, drones, and other devices of unimaginable power, each one more advanced than anything Earth had ever seen. And at the center of the vault, a single object sat upon a pedestal. It was an ancient artifact, pulsing with a strange, glowing energy. Its surface shimmered with an intricate design that none of them could comprehend. "This is it," Lieutenant Karen whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The ultimate weapon." Meanwhile, back in space, Admiral Rivers was facing his own battle. The Syndicate, though weakened, had regrouped faster than expected. New ships were appearing on the radar, ships that were even more advanced and deadly than the ones they had previously encountered. Rivers knew that the Syndicate wouldn't just retreat into the shadows. They had tasted defeat, and they would come back stronger. He ordered the fleet into a defensive position, preparing for another round of combat. But as the enemy ships appeared, there was something different about them. The energy readings were off the charts, an unknown power source that rivaled the ancient fleet's own capabilities. "Looks like we're about to find out just how dangerous the Syndicate can be," Rivers muttered, his eyes hard with resolve. "But we're ready for them." The first exchange of fire was swift and brutal. The Syndicate's new ships had a terrifying edge, their weapons firing faster than anything Earth had encountered before. But Earth's fleet wasn't without its own surprises. With the knowledge gained from the ancient fleet's vault, Rivers was able to deploy new countermeasures that took the Syndicate by surprise. The battle that followed was fierce, the void of space lit up by explosions and streaks of energy. Earth's fleet fought with everything they had, determined to protect their home and their future. But the Syndicate was relentless, their ships moving like shadows in the night, attacking from all angles. As the battle raged on, Rivers knew that this was just the beginning. The cost of victory would be high, but Earth had come too far to back down now. They would fight until the last ship, until the last breath, because the price of vengeance was steep, and there was no turning back. The edge of extinction. The battle between Earth's fleet and the Syndicate raged on, each side determined to come out on top. But the power of the Syndicate's newly advanced ships was taking a heavy toll on Earth's defenses. Admiral Rivers, watching his fleet's progress on the massive holographic display, couldn't ignore the growing sense of dread in the pit of his stomach. His forces were outnumbered, and the Syndicate's technology seemed to be one step ahead at every turn. "We need to adapt, and we need to do it fast," Rivers muttered, his voice laced with urgency. "Karen, do you have any updates from Earth Command? We need a strategy to counter these new Syndicate ships." Lieutenant Karen's face appeared on the comm screen, her brow furrowed in concern. "Sir, we've received new intel. The Syndicate isn't just launching more ships. They're reinforcing them with devastating new weapons. I'm talking about energy weapons capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single shot." Rivers clenched his fists, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "If we don't stop them now, we won't have a fleet left to protect Earth. We have no choice but to escalate." Back on Earth, the news of the fleet's dire situation had reached the government, and the mood was somber. The council was in an emergency meeting, considering every possible option to support the war effort. The most pressing question was whether to deploy Earth's last remaining card, the ancient fleet. Admiral Rivers had known that this decision would come eventually. The ancient fleet, which had been hidden away for centuries, was Earth's last line of defense. However, using it now came with risks. There were still many unknowns about its capabilities and how much of it had survived the long years of dormancy. But there was no time for second guesses. "We can't afford to wait any longer," General Lawson, the Earth Defense Command leader, said firmly. "The Syndicate won't stop until they've wiped us out. Activate the ancient fleet." The order was given, and Earth's last hope was awakened. In the deep recesses of Earth's hidden military facilities, the ancient fleet began to stir. Powerful engines that had lain dormant for centuries hummed to life. Massive warships, built with technology far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered, began to rise from the depths of their storage bays. It was an awe-inspiring sight, an ancient force ready to defend the homeworld. However, as the ships emerged from their hiding places, there was no celebration, only the recognition that they were Earth's final stand. The crew members assigned to these ships were the best of the best, each one handpicked for their expertise. They understood the weight of the responsibility they now carried. If the fleet failed, humanity itself might be doomed. "Admiral, the fleet is ready for deployment," Commander Richards reported, his voice steady despite the tension. "We'll need to move quickly if we're going to make a difference." Rivers nodded, his gaze focused on the live feed from the battlefield. "It's now or never. Let's show the Syndicate what happens when you push humanity too far." As the ancient fleet emerged from Earth's atmosphere and entered the void of space, the crews aboard the ships felt a mixture of awe and dread. They were about to face the greatest threat humanity had ever known, armed with technologies that could obliterate entire planets. The ancient fleet had been designed for this exact purpose, but would it still be as powerful as the legends claimed? The battle was already raging between Earth's remaining ships and the Syndicate's forces. The Syndicate had the upper hand, their new weapons devastating Earth's fleet with brutal precision. But when the ancient fleet arrived, everything changed. The Syndicate's forces paused, unsure of what they were seeing. The sheer scale of the new ships was staggering. These were no ordinary warships. They were living, breathing titans of metal, their weapons capable of annihilating entire fleets with a single shot. The Syndicate had never faced anything like it. "Admiral Rivers, we're ready to engage," Commander Richards said, his voice full of determination. "Shall we begin?" Rivers took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his decision pressing on him. "Do it. Show them what we're capable of." As Earth's ancient fleet engaged the Syndicate, the battlefield erupted into chaos. The sheer power of the ancient ships overwhelmed the Syndicate's forces, their energy weapons carving through enemy ships with ease. The Syndicate, caught off guard by the unexpected assault, began to retreat. But the ancient fleet wasn't done yet. The once vast Syndicate armada, which had seemed so invincible, was now crumbling under the pressure of Earth's might. The Syndicate's ships were no match for the ancient fleet's advanced technology, and they were forced to abandon the battle. However, just as victory seemed within reach, a new threat emerged, a massive hidden weapon from the Syndicate's reserves. This weapon was unlike anything Earth had seen before, a massive energy cannon capable of eradicating entire fleets in a single blast, and it was aimed directly at Earth. Rivers' heart raced as he saw the weapon powering up. The Syndicate was desperate, but they had one last card to play, and it was more devastating than anything Earth had faced. "We've got to stop that weapon before it fires," Rivers said urgently. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers and deploy all available countermeasures." In the final moments before the weapon could fire, Earth's fleet launched everything they had: missiles, energy blasts, and drones, everything in their arsenal. The ancient fleet unleashed its full power, creating a barrier of energy that deflected the incoming blast. For a moment, it seemed as though Earth had won. The Syndicate's weapon had been neutralized, but the cost of victory had been high. The ancient fleet had taken heavy damage, and many of its ships were now drifting, their systems offline. "We did it," Karen said softly, her voice filled with relief. "But at what cost?" Admiral Rivers surveyed the damage to the fleet and the silent, scattered remnants of the Syndicate's forces. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. The cost of vengeance had been steep, but humanity had shown that when pushed to the edge, they would always fight back. The road ahead. The battle had ended, but the victory felt hollow. Earth's fleet had delivered a decisive blow to the Syndicate, and the ancient ships had proven their worth. However, as the remnants of the battlefields drifted silently in the vastness of space, the reality of the future loomed large. Admiral Rivers stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring out at the wreckage of the Syndicate fleet. The sky outside was dotted with the remains of shattered ships, twisted metal, and debris. Despite their success, a deep sense of uncertainty lingered in the air. The Syndicate had been defeated, but their defeat did not guarantee peace. "We've struck a major blow," Rivers muttered to himself, his hands resting on the cold metal of the command desk. "But they'll be back. They always come back." Lieutenant Karen, standing beside him, didn't say anything at first. She knew that the Syndicate's defeat was only the beginning of a far larger conflict. "Sir, I've been reviewing the data," she said after a moment. "We've crippled their fleet, but they still have vast resources and other fleets in reserve. It's not over." Rivers nodded grimly. "I know, but at least now they know what we're capable of. We've given them a warning they won't soon forget." Back on Earth, the mood was one of mixed relief and apprehension. The war wasn't over yet, but for the first time in months, humanity had a reason to believe they could win. Earth had proven that they were not just another planet in the galaxy to be trampled by the whims of powerful alien empires. Earth was strong, and its people were willing to fight for their survival. The government issued a statement praising the bravery of Earth's fleet and honoring the memory of those who had fallen in the battle. But there was no time for celebration. The rebuilding process was already underway, and every resource was being focused on strengthening Earth's defenses. "We've won this round," General Lawson said during a speech to the nation. "But the war is far from over. We must remain vigilant, prepare for the challenges ahead, and protect everything we fought for." Admiral Rivers and his crew returned to Earth for a brief respite. They were welcomed as heroes, but their minds were focused on the task ahead. The fleet, although victorious, had sustained significant damage. Many of the ancient ships had been severely compromised, their advanced systems barely hanging on. They needed to be repaired, upgraded, and readied for the inevitable next battle. And time was not on their side. Rivers sat in his quarters, poring over the damage reports and strategizing with his senior officers. The Syndicate would not stop, and Earth had to be prepared. But beyond that, there were whispers in the corridors of power. A new threat was emerging. Not all alien empires were as hostile as the Syndicate. Some had taken notice of Earth's resilience, and there were rumors of alliances forming behind the scenes. "We can't just focus on the Syndicate," Rivers said to his officers as they gathered in the strategy room. "We need to look beyond. There's a larger universe out there, and if we don't understand it, we won't survive." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Syndicate leadership was in turmoil. The fleet had been decimated, their power shattered. Their leaders gathered in secret chambers, away from the prying eyes of the rest of the galaxy, to discuss their next move. "We underestimated Earth," one of the Syndicate commanders growled. "Their resilience is unlike anything we've seen, but we can't afford to show weakness. We will rebuild, and we will strike again, this time with everything we have." The Syndicate had suffered a blow, but they were far from finished. Their dark resolve was clear. Earth would not go unpunished. The war for dominance in the galaxy was far from over. In the weeks that followed, Earth's leaders worked tirelessly to forge alliances, strengthen their military forces, and ensure that Earth would be ready for any threats in the future. The ancient fleet, once dormant for centuries, was now the cornerstone of Earth's defense, but they knew that their strength alone wouldn't be enough. Earth needed allies, new technologies, and above all, unity. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, but they had survived. Now they would do everything in their power to ensure that no one could ever threaten their home again. The fight for survival had just begun. As Rivers gazed out at Earth from his flagship, he couldn't help but feel a sense of determination rising within him. Humanity had proved its strength once. Now they had to prove it again. He turned to his crew, his eyes filled with resolve. "We've shown them what Earth is capable of. But the real test is coming. We won't back down. We will fight, and we will win. Together." And so the story of Earth's defiance continued, one chapter closing and another beginning. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity would no longer be underestimated. They had come to the edge of extinction, but they had risen from the ashes. Now they would stand tall against any enemy, ready to fight for their survival. And the universe would soon learn that humanity was not to be trifled with. The war had reshaped the galaxy. The Syndicate's remnants retreated into the shadows, licking their wounds and plotting their return. But the message was clear. Earth had proven itself a force to be reckoned with. But the path ahead was uncertain, and even in victory, humanity faced new challenges. They had awakened a sleeping giant. The universe was watching. Admiral Rivers stood once again on the bridge of his flagship, gazing at the infinite expanse of space. The silence in the void was overwhelming, yet his thoughts were filled with the hum of 1,000 possibilities. The remnants of the Syndicate fleet were now nothing more than broken debris scattered in the darkness, but other threats were waiting, unseen. "We've won, but the war isn't over," Rivers muttered, staring at the stars beyond. "We've secured our place in the galaxy, but the galaxy is vast." Lieutenant Karen joined him at the command desk, her eyes filled with the same uncertainty. "We've proven that Earth isn't just a backwater planet anymore. We've shown them that we can fight, but now we need to show them that we can lead." Rivers nodded. "It's not just about survival anymore. It's about securing our future, our place among the stars. And for that, we'll need more than just strength. We need allies. We need knowledge. We need to become more than just a force to be feared. We need to be a force for change." Back on Earth, the mood was cautiously optimistic. The cities, though scared by the war, had begun to rebuild. People went about their lives, but the events of the past months had changed them. Humanity had faced annihilation, yet here they were, alive, strong, and united. General Lawson, now one of the most revered leaders on Earth, spoke at a public address to rally the people for what was to come. "We fought and won our place, but this is just the beginning. The galaxy is vast, and we're no longer just observers. We have to prepare for the challenges that await us." The people cheered, their voices echoing through the streets. They had not just survived, they had thrived, and they were determined to never let their guard down again. Admiral Rivers returned to Earth for a brief respite, but he knew that his work was far from over. The fleet was being repaired, the ships restored, and new technology was being developed to ensure that Earth's defenses remained unmatched. But beyond military strength, Earth had started to establish diplomatic ties with other species, carefully choosing which alliances would help secure their future. An emissary from a peaceful race of beings known as the Xyrians had already arrived, seeking a partnership. "We've watched your strength and your resilience," the Xyrian ambassador had said. "We wish to aid you, as long as you continue to prove that your heart matches your strength." The galaxy was changing. No longer would Earth be viewed as a mere pawn in a cosmic game. The age of humanity's rise had begun, and with it came new responsibilities, new alliances, and new enemies. In the far reaches of space, the Syndicate's leaders gathered, plotting their return. They had underestimated Earth before, but they would not make the same mistake twice. The defeat had only fueled their desire for revenge. "We cannot allow this humiliation to stand," one of the Syndicate commanders growled. "Earth has become a symbol, and that symbol must be destroyed." But even as the Syndicate strategized, a new order was forming. Humanity had shown its strength, its ingenuity, and its capacity for survival. The universe would never forget the day Earth stood up against the tide of destruction. Admiral Rivers was aware of the Syndicate's resolve, but he also understood that the galaxy was filled with potential allies who were ready to stand with Earth. The human spirit had proven itself time and again, and now, with the support of newfound allies and an unbreakable resolve, Earth would rise to greater heights. "We've fought for survival," Rivers said, as he looked toward the distant stars. "But now we fight for a future." And so Earth's story continued. The ancient fleet, once dormant and forgotten, was now a symbol of humanity's resilience. a reminder to the galaxy that the most underestimated species have the power to shift the balance of the stars. With the galaxy now forever aware of Earth's power, the future seemed both terrifying and exhilarating. The human race had begun its journey among the stars, and the universe would never be the same again. As Earth entered this new era, one thing was certain: humanity was here to stay, and nothing would stand in their way. The dawn of a new age had arrived.